Welcome to another video about the WEBCON way, a better way to create low-code, no-code, process-centric applications. This episode is all about multi-language processes made easy. And in order to talk about this best, why don't we take a quick look at a multi-language application. Here's a multilingual application in WEBCON BPS. This is a dashboard that's been built up. We've got tasks, we've got items, we've got forms. You can just as easily witness it inside of SharePoint or inside of Teams or interact with it in Outlook. But the thing common to all of this is we're dealing in English. Except if you work in French, everything is en français. This is a different user who works in French. Here is everything about this application, instructions, elements, even content, even notification messages. It's all in French. Here is the same application being viewed by somebody that works in German. Same situation. Actually, it takes on every language you agree to support. In this particular environment, we're supporting 6 languages, and we can switch amongst them manually at will. You have many different kinds of options if you want to build multi-language applications, especially process-centric ones. Technique number 1, well, you probably won't like this way, but some platforms do work in the following fashion. You would build one common workflow process. You'd probably create one common data store. But when it comes time to create the user interface, there'd be an English application with all of its user interface language and text and so on. There'd be a French version, a German version, a Russian version, what have you. Essentially, one process, one data tier, many user interface tiers. With luck, you might be using a tool that can make them into variations of each other and to some extent keep them in sync, but it's still going to be a lot more work than I think you're going to want to do. There is another way to do it that's not as labor intensive, but we still don't think you're going to like this way very much either. And that is, you have one application, that part's good, but you don't really put any text in any of the labels or column headers or anything else. Instead, you need to create a table, a database somewhere. This could be a spreadsheet, it could be an XML file, it could be a JSON document, it doesn't really matter. It could be a true database table. But somewhere out there, you've got a table that indicates for each control what its English name is, what its French name is, what its German name is, and you have to maintain this yourself. And you need to put a formula or a bit of code or a bit of script behind every single label control that contains a lookup query against that data source to find out what the right text is for the right language, for the right control. And you'll do that in every single control. This is labor intensive to maintain, and it's not the most performant thing in the world either. There is a better way. There is the WEBCON way, which is to do what virtually every decent web publishing system provides. One application, that's a good thing, and for every element in that application, there's a string table where you put in that application labels text in English, in French, in German, what have you. Essentially, if it's something user-facing, there's a translation table where you put in the values you care about. So if you are building something that's bilingual or multilingual, by all means, put in the text for each language as you're building the application. And if you need to make a change to something, you only have to open up the actual label and fix it. It's about as easy as it gets. Let's take a look at that inside of WEBCON BPS. I'll show you that application you saw a moment ago. And every single design element inside of it is available with a translation table. You fill these values in. You get to see the original text, you type in the other values. You come over here, everywhere there is a place to put in a text field that the user sees, there is a translation button. This is true of steps in a process. This is true of the name of the application itself. This is true of field names inside of forms. This is true of the names of reports. Essentially, fill in the blanks. If you're building a brand new application and you know a construction time that the designer knows multiple languages, you can go ahead and enter in the text as you build it. If, on the other hand, you are the designer and you only know one language and you're going to need some help providing the translation in other languages, we do provide you with a means to make that as painless as possible. Let's check it out. Here's an application that is only in English at the moment. If I take a look at it from a French portal, the portal elements are translated, but the application elements are still very much in English. The same thing is true if we take a look at it from our German incarnation. I could come in here and go to every step in the process and edit this chart every single time, but we can make it easier. Let's go over here and run our import-export translator. Now you need to provide the location of the database server and the name of the database you're working with. And then here are all my applications. Here is the application I would like, and I want to export this in Unicode as French. There we go. Out it comes. And if you take a look at it, here is an Excel spreadsheet that's ready to be filled in. This is an application. This is where we are, the name of the object, the value, fill in the translation. The same thing with the names of all reports. This is the description of the report, the name of the view, and so on. The names of all the columns, the names of the widgets in the dashboard, everything in the process, everything inside of the workflow. Yes, you'll be filling in a number of values, but you'll only need to do it once, because when we fill this in and import it, changing something here and there within the normal user interface is not that daunting a task. Now I have here a filled-in spreadsheet where I have gone ahead and provided translations in lots of places. I've done my level best with the help of Google Translate. We're going to go ahead and there you have it. Let's go ahead and take a look at, well, anything. Open it up, and sure enough, we have translations everywhere. Let's go ahead and refresh this. Everything is in French. And if we create a new item, we see this in French, we see that in French, we see the whole thing in French. Well, except for one thing. But we have ways of helping you with that as well. Sometimes the content of the application needs to be made multilingual at the same time. And although we're not going to automatically translate text on the fly, we can absolutely do the next best things. Let's take a look at two of the biggest issues, lookups and notifications. Let's return to the same design change request application. And you see here that there are a number of categories for the design change that we can choose. This is in the English form. I would expect them to be in English. But if I come back over here to the French version, I certainly see the names of fields. Those all got translated at the last step. And in fact, the names of the attributes have been localized. But the actual data values, plumbing, paint, lighting, the description of plumbing, the description of paint, these are still in English. We can do something about that. Right now, Category is a choice field, and it's being populated by this data source called design change categories. Design change categories has 2 columns in it, name and description. That's where it's getting it. But if I were to make this a little bit different and use a slightly different data source, design change categories, with 4 columns, name, description, name in French, description in French, now we've got something. So if you do a tiny little bit of extra work to provide extra columns with extra data values, and I switch to the different data source, check out what I can do. I can say here in the configuration of this choice field, support multi-language names. And then here, for name, there's a translation area, and I can say for French, get the French value from that column. And here under description, get the value of the description in French from that column. And if you look at the labels have already been translated. I just need to get the data correct, and I just did. So let's click OK. Let's save. And let's go here, and I will refresh. And now if I choose something, look, there it is in French. Flip back over here. Here everything is in English. It just works. In fact, check this out. Let's go ahead and fill something out. Let's choose this and submit it. Okay, here's the item, and you see éclairage. Now if I go back over here and I look at the exact same item in English, it says lighting. That's right, we're displaying the correct language depending on what the lookup value says and depending on who the person is looking at the form. And as for email templates, well, that turns out to be really easy too. This is an email template that I've set up for this particular application, and we already have translation tables for all of the elements like the subject line and the header title and everything, and they can vary by subject or courtesy copy subject and whatnot. If I want to change the title of the message, this is where I would do it. Same thing with the message body, same thing everywhere. And that allows one user to get email notifications that look like that or like that, and a different user to get email messages that look like this. It's great to have your application localized and internationalized and multilingual, but the platform itself ought to be able to support multiple languages on the fly too, and WEBCON BPS is great at that. What's more, you have the ability to extend it. Check it out. From the WEBCON BPS portal, you can see that we support a number of languages. In this particular installation, it's these 6. Where do we get those languages? You need to come over to Designer Studio and go to System Settings, and you'll see Interface Language Packs. We've got 6 of them right here. If you want to add new ones, you indicate a language code, a name, and you upload a language pack. Where do you get those? Right here. This is the BPS Translator website. It's what we use to create language packs, and it's what you can use to help us, either to improve translations we provided or to provide some of your own. Every customer and partner can have access to this, and it's where we have language packs for our SharePoint tightly coupled interface, our installer, Designer Studio, our Outlook add-in, and the WEBCON BPS portal that we've been working with. If you want to take a look at one of these, we've translated 40.02% of the strings that we have in our application in the Portuguese language. And you can see here, using English as a reference, The abbreviation for Saturday is SA in English, it's SAB in Portuguese, and if you wanted to suggest a translation, you would type it in here. When you're ready, you generate a language package. It gets saved as a zip file. The zip file just contains some JavaScript and JSON information, and that's what you upload into Designer Studio. As much as we like applications that can be used in more than one language, sometimes you need to decide on one common language and make sure everyone uses it. So as much as we support multiple languages, we also support the ability to enforce a single language. Imagine having a process that begins in France and then gets approved by somebody in the United States and then gets routed to someone in Hungary and then someone in Kazakhstan. In those kinds of scenarios, someone 3 steps forward in the process might not be able to read what you typed in step 1. So we may need to pick one language and enforce it. Fortunately, we make that pretty easy. This particular application has a workflow, a form, custom email templates, custom repo. There are a lot of assets here. But right at the top of the whole application, there's a general tab, and here is where you set the application language for the whole thing. So rather than it being dynamic based on user settings or global settings or anything like that, you can say, this application, no matter where it's used, is going to be in English, or whatever language you have configured. Well, there you have it. By being able to build and maintain one solution, one powerful solution, and provide language tables everywhere there's user-facing text, and being able to support multi-language lookups, and being able to support language-specific content templates, and being able to provide you with custom translation tools to reduce the amount of steps necessary, we have effectively provided you with one wonderful worldwide way. We've provided you with the WEBCON way. So thank you very much for attending in every language we can possibly fit on this slide. If you'd like to have more information, please check out www.webcon.com.